Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling, and thank you very much for coming by the channel and checking out today's video. Really appreciate that. And guys, today we're going to shift gears a little bit and we're going to talk about bank fishing. I think that doing these YouTube videos, I get caught up a lot of times on thinking that everybody just fishes out of a bass boat. But I really get a lot of comments from people that fish out of a kayak, or they float fish, or they fish off the bank, especially people commenting about bank fishing. So I have got a ton of experience fishing banks because that's how I started out fishing before I had a boat. And I've bank fished a lot since then. So I got some really good tips and advice that's going to help you guys, catch a lot more fish, off the bank, regardless, the type of body of water you're fishing. So we're going to get into that in today's video. Also, guys, quick invitation. I just want to invite everybody to please swing by and check out my Solar Bat Signature Series sunglasses here. Right now this month, got them at 30% off, including anytime you purchase a pair of glasses, you get a free hard case with them. And also, if you use the promo code RandyB, capital R, capital B, you get free shipping and handling. So you can get them at the link I'll put in my description here, or you can also get them through my Tackle Warehouse link. Tackle Warehouse carries them too, so I really appreciate that. And also, guys, anyone interested in booking an on-the-water lesson with me, all you got to do is go to my Facebook page, Randy Blaukat Professional Angler, and just shoot me a private message for the details, on those lessons there, so really appreciate that. Okay, there's three types of bank fishing I want to talk about in today's video. The first one is if you're walking the bank, just on a lake, on a larger body of water. The second is if you're walking the bank in a pond. And the third, if you're walking the bank fishing a creek or something like that. There's three, and that pretty much encompasses about all the type of water you're going to fish. And we're also going to talk about the best lures for those situations. So let's start out fishing. Let's start out on the creeks and ponds, and then we'll finish up with the lakes. I think most people fish the lakes, but there are quite a few people that fish creeks and ponds. Creek fishing is where I really started out fishing, and the problem you have with creeks and especially in my part of the country, is there's been so much development in and around those creeks. A lot of the creeks around the country have really gone downhill over the past 30 or 40 years in their fishing quality. You've got siltation, you've lost a lot of water depth, you got water pollution issues. Creeks I really am disturbed by what's happened to creek fishing. You just do not have the quality of creek fishing that you used to. But assuming that you do, assuming you got a creek that's got some fish in it, creek fishing off the bank is probably the easiest type of bank fishing you're going to have, because it's all about deeper water in those creeks, and it's all about some type of a current break. That's where I learned how to fish current, or fish in and around current, was fishing and wading creeks, because I could understand up close and personal, where those bass lived. So when you're fishing a creek, the main thing about catching bass in a creek is the bass are always going to be in the deeper water. That's just that simple. Creeks, for the most part, you have a series of shallow water, a little bit deeper water, in between water. You got a lot of dead water. The flat, riffly type areas in a creek are no good for bass, and the areas that have like a uniform depth of like 2 or 3 feet are usually not very good. You want to look for bends in a creek. Bends will create these washout areas. Like some of the banks are undercut, and these washout areas create deeper holes in these bends. And a lot of times, there'll be like root wads and logs and stuff like that get caught in the bends of those creeks. So really focus on the bends of those creeks with a little bit deeper water. That's going to be the best way to do it. Some of the best creek baits, guys, you can't go wrong with. Like a little Ned rig is going to be good. Some type of a little finesse jig is going to be good. I've caught a lot of fish on a small crankbait like that. I used to catch them on that Rebel Deep We Are in creeks all the time. And a little bitty Rapalamena, like a little 2.5-inch Rapalamena can be really, really good, or a small tube. If you had one bait to throw in a creek that'll probably catch you more than anything else, is a little Ned rig. Ned rig will catch you smallmouth, spotted bass, or largemouth in a creek. Okay, now the next one is pond fishing. I used to be a pond fishing expert and I was also an expert at sneaking in ponds, because around here in my part of the country, none of the farmers around here let you fish their ponds. None of them would. It's like, I was like 13, 14 years old, and I didn't have any other way to go fishing other than getting in a farm pond. So I wound up sneaking in ponds at night all the time. I got run out of ponds all the time. I had this one dude snuck in this one pond, and I don't know how he knew I was there, because this pond was hidden at the bottom of a little valley, and I hadn't been there 5 minutes, and this truck come flying over the top of a hill. Guy runs out with a shotgun heading over to me. "You get out of here, you little bastard, don't ever come back." It's like, guy just being a real dick about it, but I'd ask them for permission and they'd always say no, and I never kept any fish. So pond fishing was really good, but it was also stressful because, like I said, you couldn't find any place to fish. Okay, so here's one of the things that you want to do if you have a pond. I'm not condoning or recommending sneaking into a pond, especially if you're an adult. It's a little bit different when you're a kid like I was. But one of the things about pond fishing is most ponds, you can work around them pretty quick, and it's not that big of a deal just to walk around the whole pond. There's two different tips of advice I'll give you on a pond. It has to do with your water clarity. A Texas rig plastic worm and a spinnerbait is probably the two best pond lures, especially if your pond has a little bit more off-colored water. And one of the things you want to do with ponds is you need to saturate everything, because most ponds are not like real deep in the middle of it. So my pond fishing technique is a little bit different than my lake fishing technique. Is I'll just walk down the pond, and I'll usually parallel the bank with like a spinnerbait on my first pass. And then, if there's any cover around there, I may throw a little Texas rig worm around it. That can work pretty good. But a little spinnerbait is deadly on a pond for the most part. Ponds don't receive as much fishing pressure. Spinnerbaits usually work a little bit better. So like a little profile, like a little 1/4 ounce spinnerbait is really, really good on ponds. And a Cinco or Texas rig worm is another good bait. Now, if you can get into a pond at night fishing on a pond is so much better than the day fishing, even if the water's a little bit off colored. There's only two baits that you need for pond fishing at night, and that's a black spinnerbait and a buzzbait, especially in the summertime of the year. Spinnerbait if the water is a little bit cooler, the buzzbait if it's a little bit warmer, but buzzbait and a spinnerbait at night is going to be really good. Okay, now let's talk about the main thing. What I want to talk about today is the bank fishing on lakes. This is where a lot of people go, because a lot of people don't have access to creeks or ponds, so they go bank fishing on big lakes. And I hear all the time, I have people messaging me about, I'm going up to such and such lake, where's a good place to fish off the bank? So what you want to do when you're bank fishing is, the first thing that you have to remember is try to stay away from the access areas that are easy to get to, because they're obviously going to have the most fishing pressure. So try to stay away from those places where you have like boat launch ramps where, you can pull up on this nice parking lot and you can walk down to the bank and start fishing. You're probably not going to be in the best area. One of the things that you want to do to have the best bank fishing experience is to try to find a boat ramp that is a little bit more off the wall, or, some access area that, it doesn't even have to be a boat ramp. It can be some access area that gets you close to the lake in one of the major creek arms on the lake. Now, the major creek arms, this is going to put you in some good water, because the creek arms always, the creek arms always hold, a big concentration of fish. And if you try to walk the bank on the main lake, you're going to be in a lot more dead water. So simply, if you look at a map of a lake, try to find 2 or 3 of, a decent sized creek arm. It doesn't have to be the biggest creek arm in the lake, but just look for a decent sized creek arm, and that is going to give you more options. And also that's going to narrow the water down. And then try to find an access area where you can get down close to the water, where you can walk down to the water, and that's where you begin your search. Now, the first thing, there's going to be every single lake is different as far as what your cover availability is. You obviously you have to get on some type of a bank where you can get to the water. So therefore, like a bluff bank's not going to be any good. If you have a big weedy flat bank, it's not going to be any good. You need to have some type of a flatter to a 45-degree angle bank that will allow you to get down to the water, but also be a good area to fish. So the first place you want to look for when you go into these creek arms and you're walking the bank is try to concentrate on any of those secondary points that are in the creek arms. Those secondary points are always going to be magnets for bass. And depending upon the time of year, there's a lot of different techniques that you can use with them. So point fishing is a little bit different, because when I'm bank fishing off the point, what I usually do is I get right on the point itself. And then I'm going to cast like at a 45-degree angle or parallel down the sides of those points, and then I'm going to cast straight out into deeper water off the end of the point. Now, a lot of times this is the best cast to make because fish, they usually are used to seeing a boat throwing a lure to the bank and reeling it out to deeper water. So sometimes if you get on that point and you throw out into deeper water, you're going to give them a presentation that they don't normally see. So based upon your water clarity and your time of year and your water temperature, it's going to dictate your techniques. Most of the time, your bank fishing, guys, is going to be better when that water temperature is like over 55 or 60 degrees. You're going to have a tough time catching bass on cold water bank fishing because a lot of those fish just aren't shallow that time of year, and they're not positioned to be caught. So you want to be in a little bit warmer situation, a little bit warmer water situation. But my favorite way to fish a point, if I'm fishing off the bank with it, is to throw a Texas rig worm. A Texas rig worm is a great bank lure. And you can also use a shaky head. It can be really good. You don't really want to use like a football head jig. It gets hung up really bad. But a Texas rig or shaky head is going to be a really good choice for you on that. Another good bait for it that I've caught, quite a few fish on is, again, some type of a smaller spinner bait or a topwater lure. If your water visibility is over like 3 feet, a walking topwater can be good, because with a walking topwater in that cleaner water situation, you can cast way out there into deeper water and you may pick up a fish, 30 yards off the bank that's out there chasing shad or something like that. A swim bait in the same situation can be good, like that Megabass Mag Draft. Anything like that you can throw and saturate the end of that point at a variety of different depth zones. Sometimes those fish will be on the surface, sometimes mid depth, sometimes they're going to be on the bottom. Just depends on the situation you're in. Okay, now once you've exhausted the points, or maybe say for example there's not that many points there, the next type of structure that you need to concentrate on are banks that have like a 45-degree angle slope to it, that have some type of a rock transition. Rock transitions in a lake is probably the number one structure next to, there's one other we're going to talk about here in a second, but rock transitions are key areas to fish for on the bank, because anytime that you have a rock transition, you're going to have a group of fish in and around that rock transition. And most of the time on those rock transitions, those fish are fairly close to the bank. So try to locate these areas where you have like some steeper, or maybe some larger rock turning into smaller rock, turning into gravel, a mix of gravel and different size of rocks. Get on those rock transition areas and cast parallel to those banks with some type of a crankbait. Could just some type of a crankbait that hits the bottom, depending upon the water visibility, your color selection can just vary with that. But paralleling those rocky banks like that with a crankbait off the bank is probably the number one way to catch bass off of the bank if you're in a situation like that. Now, most of the time those rock transitions, they last anywhere between 20 feet to 100 foot. So if you can identify where those rock transition areas are, you're going to be in good water all the time. And I usually start out with a crankbait, but if they're not biting a crankbait, then you can try other stuff, a jerkbait, a jig, top water lure, spinner bait, again, all relative to the water clarity and the water temperature with that. But probably next to the rock transition, it's a real close, that's first and second, is a riprap bank. Riprap bank, there's some pluses and minuses to that. Number one, if you're on a riprap bank on a lake, you're going to be around some fish. And a riprap bank has the perfect angle to it to fish off of the bank, because you can walk down that riprap and you can cast parallel to the bank. And if you've ever fished riprap from a boat, you know the most productive way to catch bass on a riprap is, you know, parallel on the riprap. You're in perfect position off the bank to do that. So riprap is one of those structures where you're not at a disadvantage, guys. If you're fishing riprap off the bank, you may even have a better advantage, because you don't have to worry about boat positioning or wind or current. Try to fish riprap if you got it. It's probably the easiest, best place to fish off of the bank. And again, the techniques just depend on everything else. Jerk bait, swim bait, crank bait, you know, jig or worm, about anything that you want to throw is going to work on a riprap. But if you do fish a riprap, guys, be careful walking on it, because riprap is dangerous. The rocks shift underneath you. There's a lot of snakes in riprap, especially if it's warmer out there. So, you know, it's something that you need to be you need to have some agility before you get on those ripraps to fish. Probably not the best idea, you know, if you're not in the best shape or something, but it is the best thing to do it. So anyway, guys, just those are some good bank fishing tips. You know, hope it helps you guys out catch some, and we'll check in later. See you.